Hey everyone, I'm going to be reading this particular article of the Toronto Sun. This is offered by Brian Lilly, November 18th, 2019, with the headline, Lilly, Economic Migrants Flourish, Others Flail in Trudeau's Canada. And because it is regarding the immigration process, or immigration in general in this country, I want to cover this because this is one area where, like I say, I try to be as nuanced as humanly possible, and I've covered this topic extensively in the past. But I think this might help clarify things too, or at least in some degree, to help alleviate some of the concerns people have when we're talking about immigration in this country. Listen, people like myself, I am not anti-immigration. Neither are a lot of Canadians who are showing concern, nor do I think this Brian Lilly is. A lot of Canadians who are showing concern for mass immigration are just pointing out, a lot of the times, it's just economic realities. It's just, and you know what? Obviously, economics isn't the only thing, right? It is a very important thing, obviously, but there's also other social implications, or even things that will affect what freedom even means in this country. Because there are people, that's the thing, because Canada is a country based on, historically, a lot of Anglo-Saxon people, right? Let's not make no mistake about this, folks. Let's just be honest here. Canada's a country, just like the United States, that was predominantly created and populated, well, there were the First Nation people. This has nothing to do with denying the First Nation people. But predominantly, when you're talking about the people that came from Europe, they were the Anglo-Saxons, who were mostly proponents of Enlightenment era ideas. You know, individualism, the respect of the individual, and all the freedoms, liberties, and responsibilities that entails. But if you affect the culture to the point where you're bringing people to this country to such a substantial degree that they can greatly affect and shift that culture or those cultural norms, which is a reality, folks. I mean, come on, when you're bringing 1 million people every 3 years into a country that only has an adult population of about, 31 million? Because, yeah, there's 36, 37 million Canadians, but you got to remember, a portion of those are kids, right? So come on, strip those out. But if you're talking about 30 million people, an extra 1 million people every 3 years, given enough time, especially when you're talking about politics and voting, depending on the kind of people that you bring in this country, their ideologies, or what they even understand to be what represents freedom, that can greatly affect the culture of your country. And trying to suggest or deny that reality is just causing more angst and division among the Canadian people. So stop playing these stupid fucking games, first and foremost, and just let's deal with the reality. And the reality is that not every human being on this planet promotes that same kind of individualistic liberty that the founding fathers, or those who created this modern country we call Canada, or this fairly newly found country of Canada. I mean, come on, it's only 150 years old, not that old, folks. Or the U.S., like 200 some years old. But, a couple centuries, like these countries are fairly new in terms of getting out from underneath the kind of monarchs or dictatorships that used to represent not just Europe, but how the world used to actually function historically. I mean, even some of those First Nation groups, they were tribes. They were warring tribes and factions that fought each other. So to even pretend, that's the thing, that as if there was just, unity of just a bunch of First Nation tribal people in North America that all just sang Kumbaya with each other. I mean, come on. All that shit is based on bullshit pretenses and complete fabrications that contradict the reality that represented those days. And that's another thing. Some people did come to this country from Europe with imperialist intentions, or to be oppressive in some way. But there was also a majority of people that came just to be settlers, just to seek some form of freedom, or to escape the kind of authoritarianism that they lived under in terms of the regimes or the countries of Europe, where they were born, originated from. And once again, I'm not against immigration. I'm against mass immigration. I'm against illegal immigration, or so-called asylum seekers from the U.S. I mean, come on. Seeking asylum in Canada from the U.S., I could only wish to do the exact opposite, to be honest with you. Because actually the U.S. is a much freer country based on their constitution and their inherent and inalienable rights than Canada could ever hope to be. Although I do hope someday maybe we can get more closely aligned to respecting those fundamental aspects of individual liberty that our peers to the south have understood for centuries. Anyways, folks, like I said, I'm going to read from this article. I'm going to be going through a little bit here at the top, But there's a section actually a little bit down below that I really want you to hear. If Canada's going to have a successful immigration system, then it has to be done right and right now. It's too often not. From the border mess at Roxham Road to new data showing certain types of settlement working better than others, we have a system in flux and the Trudeau government has to fix it. Don't take this as anti-immigrant. I'm anything but that. Anyways, folks, I'm going to get down a little bit further in this article and talk about the point that I think was really important and what I want you to hear. When people come to Canada, they hope for a better life. And despite the claims from the anti-immigrant set, most immigrants to Canada not only find it, they add to the country. According to federal figures from the Federal Immigration Department, economic class immigrants were net contributors to Canada in 2016. Internal government documents show that federal economic class immigrants were a net benefit of $5,431 in 2016, while provincial economic class immigrants were a net benefit to the tune of $5,307. The net benefit is the tax paid after accounting for any service or government transfers received. On the other end of the spectrum, we find the results of the Syrian refugee resettlement. On that file, it really is the tale of two cities. On the one hand, we have the privately sponsored refugees who have adapted to Canada much quicker and with more ease than, on the other hand, government-sponsored refugees. They have not fared as well. A report by the Immigration Department released earlier this year found that 93% of government-sponsored refugees ended up claiming social assistance during their first year in Canada, compared to just 2% of Syrian refugees brought in through private sponsorships. There are many reasons for this, but the first among them has to be the way the different streams operate. Privately sponsored refugees have a community around them when they arrive, people willing to help them find lodging, a job, a helping hand to learn English, a natural pathway to integrate into their community. So anyways, folks, I'll place a link to this article in the description of the video below. I just want to point out two things in particular. One is, when we're talking about economics or migrants, I mean, why is it always got to be what can they provide? This is a problem with government and so much intervention in the economy, and why it causes so much division among not just the populace, but their sentiment towards immigrants is the fact that it's always done in terms of economics, right? And I mean, that can be played out, it can be spun positively or it can be spun very negatively, right? But that's the thing, at the end of the day, the main reason why immigration is being pushed these days is to get people to be taxpayers, or to force these immigrants to pay for the malinvestments or misdeeds or the debts and deficits incurred by the political class and their voting cohorts in the past. To me, listen, I'll tell you how much I'm not anti-immigrant. I'm saying you immigrants are being soaked and sponged. Well, at least the economic immigrants, what this tells me is you're being, or your economic prosperity, your past economic prosperity, which must have come from where you lived originally, because, you know, if you're new a Canadian, you didn't earn it here, but that means that all the economic prosperity that you gained historically, the Canadian government and their counterparts in the media only look at you as a tax slave or a tax base to sustain their own entitlements. The public sector, the overbloated bureaucracy, I guess they like immigrants because it helps sustain their own livelihoods. Like I say, come on, folks. So really, at the end of the day, the messaging that I'm getting from this is they love economic migrants for nothing more than to benefit them personally, economically. Where's the care, the compassion? No, just pay up and let me take advantage of your economic resources. That's the message I'm getting. But in addition to that, the other side is the very real fact that those illegal migrants crossing down there at Roxham Road are having a real profound effect on the economic bottom line in this country, because the Canadian people are forced to pay for these people. Like I say, there's so much economic harm. And once again, it's people using government as a means to an end. The big takeaway I get from this article is yeah, privately sponsored people, well, it's because people have skin in the game. If you're privately sponsored, the person that's sponsoring you, they have skin in the game. So they're going to try at least to do the right thing, which is something that I completely am on board with and agree with. Get big government out of the pockets or out of controlling the economic prosperity and how that plays out. Like I say, let's get big government out of the economy entirely. And once again, if we can do that, just like the separation of church and state, if we can get to the point where we can separate the economy in the state, well, then once again, you won't see this constant hate, derision, and division in regards to not just foreigners or immigrants who come to this country, but even domestic disputes in terms of, out west or the East Coast or Quebec or the equalization payment. Like I say, take force, right? Remove that mystical gun in the room, that metaphorical gun in the room, remove that from the equation and allow the free market to properly function. And like I say, then you'll see lower tensions and greatly reduced division in this country. Because once again, people at the end of the day, what they're really concerned about mostly is the fact that government is carrying favor for some people and imposing hardships on others. The government is picking winners or losers in the economy. At the end of the day, people are like, there's going to be winners or losers at some way or at some point in some regard. But what Canadians, what most people want at the end of the day is just whoever the winners or losers are going to be, let's make sure it's based and built upon competence or proper market fundamentals. Not because big government gave one group or one individual a leg up over the other. That is the area that does cause the divide, that does cause angst in terms of immigration. Remove that obstacle, remove that barrier, and you'll see that Canada is, once again, back to the place it has always been and recognized is a country of people who have no issue, take no issue with immigrants coming to this country. And you know that's the case. Most Canadians aren't racist or Islamophobes or haters of people of different skin colors or backgrounds. No. At the end of the day, most Canadians just want to know that the system they're functioning under is at least fair in some way and rewards competence and personal responsibility. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.